those who we are going to have. So I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Monday, June 27th, 2022, and ask staff to please call the roll.
President Furman,
Present.
Alder Carter,
Present.
Alder Verveer,
Here.
Alder Figueroa Cole,
Sorry, guys, I'm here.
thank you. Alder Vitiver,
Present.
Alder Evers. All right, Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you. So our first item is general public comment, and we have no registrants. So are there any disclosures or recusals from the body? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have a couple of notes. The motion on item 3 is to place on file without prejudice. We have requests for exclusion of items 10, 14, 15, 16. We have one registrant who's available to answer questions on item 11, and then we'll exclude item 20 since it's a discussion. Are there other notes on the agenda or requests for items to be excluded from the consent agenda? Seeing, Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question or two on agenda item number 8, so please exclude that resolution.
Item 8. All right. Anything else, Alder?
No, thank you. The other one I wish to separate was already covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Carter?
Number 9.
Number 9. All right. Anything else, Alder?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So we will, again, so just noting the motion on item 3 is to place on file without prejudice. We will separate items 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, and 20 from the consent agenda. Are there any additional items? Seeing none, President Furman.
Move consent agenda with 3 placed on file and 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, and 20 not on the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alder Carter. All right, the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. And we will come to item 8, which is Legistar 71984 regarding positions in the Metro operating budget. And I would like to ask our General Manager Stuenberg to start with a perhaps short orientation to this item, Justin.
Sure. Thank you all. Good afternoon. So I'll touch kind of 2 items here. One is why I'm requesting this change, and then the second part about the mechanics of how we're actually proposing to do it. So first is around the, right now we have a single deputy general manager here at Metro. That's Crystal Martin. I'm sure many of you know her. She is retiring at the end of this year. And so we're taking this opportunity to look at what structure makes the most sense for us, especially in light of the dramatic increase in both workload and complexity of projects that are coming up here at Metro. I'm sure you all know our major projects around the BRT and network redesign, but also the transition to electric buses, the new technology systems for both our operations and for fare collection, standing up a second operational facility for the first time in our history. There's a whole host of things that are making our operations more complex and moving us in a direction that requires a different skill set, and as well as additional capacity to execute major initiatives. And so with that in mind, I've done a lot of research around other transit agencies around the country. And what I'm proposing here is to move from a model where we have one deputy, but no chief operating officer, chief maintenance officer, those chief level positions, to one in which we have the chief positions, but no deputy. So I'm planning to basically create 4 positions from the one, but not add FTEs, basically repurposing some additional vacant staff positions at slightly lower level management positions. I think that'll help us recruit, new staff members that have, potentially from the outside, but also potentially from the inside that have the ability or existing skill sets to grow into these positions and learn what needs to be learned in order to execute these projects and successfully. So that's kind of the overall intent for what I'm trying to achieve and why. The mechanics for how we're doing it is to create additional Group 21 positions to slot these folks into. I know that's a bit unorthodox. Typically those are department or division heads. But in extensive consultations with HR, we agree that this is the best path forward for these. In the competition out there is very fierce for people with these skill sets. And frankly, we are very well behind the curve in terms of salaries for transit agencies across the country. And so if we want to have hope of bringing in folks that have some of these skills, we do need to be a bit more competitive in salary. And so this was a path to being more competitive and creating the structure that I think we need to move forward and successfully deliver these projects. I know that there has been question around, the Comp Group 21, and is that necessary? And again, in our consultations with HR, we felt because our primary market for these positions will be external hires, the fact that longevity is not included in the Comp Group 21 positions is okay. And so we felt that this was the most appropriate path. It does come with some trade-offs, though. One is around the 5-year contracts. So, much like me, it would be a contract position. And so these folks would be in for a 5-year contract and potentially not renew. So they've lost that civil service protection. It would also have a residency requirement. And so those are the 2, I would say, main things. We've also had questions around the process for selections and interviews. And the mayor and I have discussed this. And I think what we would propose is that, at least for the 2 of us in these roles, that I do the initial rounds of interviews with an interview panel. And the mayor meets with the recommended candidate to make sure that she is okay with that person before we make an offer. And then on an annual basis during the Metro check-ins, rather than just for me with the mayor, it would be the team of 5 of us doing the check-in with the mayor to basically reduce the mayor's workload by adding these positions. So yeah, that's a very brief overview of why I'm trying to do this, and then the mechanics of how we're doing it. Happy to answer the questions, though.
Thank you, Justin. Are there questions for staff on this item? Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Justin, not only for the introductory remarks just now, but for the meeting that we had to discuss this topic many weeks ago now. So you covered pretty much all of my questions, both in that earlier conversation and then just now, but I do have a couple of follow-ups that actually might be more appropriate for HR staff or for Your Honor, the mayor. Why don't we just start with, could you go into a little more detail, and if HR staff is willing to as well, that would be great. I don't see Harper here unless he joined the meeting a moment ago and I haven't seen him. And I'm not sure who from HR might respond to this, but Justin or HR staff, could you respond as to why we couldn't simply amend Chapter 3 of the ordinances and increase the salary ranges for Comp Group 44 so that we are more competitive on this national marketplace?
So, I can give initial thoughts, and I don't know, I don't see Harper E-Man is on. I don't know if she wants to add anything, but the main crux of the problem was that without longevity, the most basically, in order to be competitive in the market for an external hire, I would have had to go much higher than many other civil service positions in the city because of the longevity impacts. And so for those that might be an internal hire, that would place them, at a very high level. And so, that's most of my discussions were with Harper around this. But yeah, that was the primary motivation was around not wanting to exceed other civil service positions because of the impacts of longevity.
And amending the ordinance only as it related to Comp Group 44 because of the particular circumstances that you articulated, Justin, wasn't seen as doable.
Yeah, I know that there was concern about doing that because it would place metro civil service positions higher than any other civil service positions in the city. It would place us more in line with the fire department, but it's not a civil service position, is my understanding.
Yeah, the fire supervisors, as we know, have a collective bargaining agreement. And then, and I appreciate, by the way, I should articulate that I do appreciate your written memo as well. I thought maybe there would be an HR memo. There is not. So as you recall, when we talked one-on-one about this, I was concerned that it could be precedent setting, that there would be other divisions and departments that would be seeking to go the Comp Group 21 route and what the workload that would entail would be for, among others, the mayor in terms of the interview process and supervisory role and the fact that this could eventually become quite a trend. Mayor or again, I don't know if HR wants to speak to this or not. I don't even know who the Metro analyst is off the top of my head, but have we had, Mayor, could you answer that, please? Have you had other requests from our department and division heads that have the same challenges that Justin and Metro have in terms of hiring and the competition nationally that might be seeking Comp Group 21 for their current Comp Group 18 employee positions?
No, I honestly haven't heard anyone raise it as an issue. I think, in fact, it is sort of the opposite concern. As Justin said, we have been through many iterations of how we could accomplish this. And the strong concern that I heard from HR, and I see Iman is here and she can speak to it as well. The strong concern I heard from HR was that they were worried about if leaving these in Comp Group 44 would set a precedent that would spur other agencies to make a similar ask as opposed to what we're doing now. But Iman, your hand is up. If you want to turn your camera on and chat with us, please do.
Thank you. And thank you, Iman. I wasn't sure if you were the Metro analyst or who was.
I'm not, but I used to be. I'm happy to be here.
So you're very familiar with your organization and what
Yeah.
you're dealing with.
And I have worked with Justin in consultation on this process. Our main concern, as Justin stated, was to avoid throwing all of our civil service positions in flux. There were simply for his needs with the external market to obtain talent with transit experience. Our salary schedules were as maxed out as we could get them. And so he opted for this alternate route to kind of hit the mark that he's looking for to be able to recruit and attract talent to get these projects off the ground. We have in the recent history heard from certain job classifications that we are not as competitive externally, specifically in the field of IT. I know that those wages are challenged when it comes to seeking out IT talent, specifically with Epic and AmFam and other competitors in the Madison market. Overall, I would advocate that, we take a long, hard look at our comp plan as a whole. But I know that is a longer term solution to our salary concerns across the board.
And let me just add in there that when Iman says comp plan, she doesn't mean the comprehensive plan. She means the compensation plan.
Compensation plan. Sorry, HR speak. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Chapter 3 of MGL. Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Iman. Thank you, Mayor, for that.
Yeah, of course. And it is this is a serious long-term conversation, no question. And I do think that it in the long term, it does warrant us really looking at our compensation plan. And that's something that Harper and I have talked about multiple times. So I don't want to downplay that as an issue at all. But I have not heard anybody else, looking for a solution and not being able to find one in the same way that Justin was challenged.
Thank you. And before I ask one final follow-up, Justin, perhaps you wanted to add something. I see you raised your hand.
Sorry, I realized I forgot to mention one piece of info here. There's actually 2 resolutions that are kind of companions for this. One is to actually change the ordinance to add the position names, and the other is to do the budget amendment, which is what you see today. The other one had an additional referral added to it, and so it got moved. And so it'll actually come to you at the next finance meeting. But I just wanted to make sure we highlighted that really they are 2 parts of the same thing. I consider this discussion kind of relevant to both of them. So just wanted to make sure that was mentioned.
Thank you. I was wondering about that. So I appreciate you explaining that they got separated in the process. It's too bad we couldn't keep them together. And so I think my last follow-up question is for you, Mayor, and that is that as Justin articulated, which was one of my questions to him several weeks ago about how much he envisioned your office being involved in a Comp Group 21 hire for all these new Metro positions. Obviously, we all know of your great personal interest and expertise in public transportation, so I have no doubt that you do have great interest in vetting these candidates. But could you just speak for a moment about how these positions would be handled in your office versus other Comp Group 21 positions? Would they be treated differently? It seemed like in Justin's introductory presentation, they will be.
Well, so Alder, is honestly a real range in how we interact with the different comp group positions. As you know, there are some that are sort of at the top of their agency's org chart, and there are others that are a level down in their agency's org chart already. So the frequency with which I meet with different Comp Group 21 positions varies pretty widely, depending on a number of things, including where they are in the org chart. I think we will, maintain sort of the general form in that, I will be involved in the final hiring decision, but I won't be involved in the entire process leading up to that. And as Justin articulated already, I'll be involved in, sort of the end point of an annual evaluation, executive check-in is the word that we use. And we'll certainly interact with these folks, on some basis. throughout the course of their duties, but likely mostly through and with Justin, since he'll be their day-to-day supervisor. But frankly, there is no one pattern for how I meet with and supervise Comp Group 21 folks. There's a bunch of different iterations based on, again, where they are in their org chart, what they're working on, what their needs are, what my needs are, and our collective priorities. So they won't be treated like every other Comp Group 21 person, but that's because no two Comp Group 21 people are treated exactly the same in that sense.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you all very much for your responses.
Thank you, Alder. Are there additional questions for staff on this item? Seeing none, President Furman, a motion, please.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 8. We'll move on to item 9, which is Legistar 71901, authorizing the Transit General Manager to apply for a Section 5310 grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Let's actually take these things in the right order this time. President Furman, can we get a motion, please?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Should we have Justin tell us what this is? Yes. Justin, do you want to orient us to this, and then we'll do questions?
This is a fairly routine item. So every year, we as a region are designated a certain amount of funding from the federal government under what's called the 5310 program. It's the federal code, or the federal section of legislation for it. And that's intended to serve capital needs for persons with disabilities. And so every year we get these funds, but then we have to actually appropriate them to different purposes. And part of that is for our own use in our operation and our fleet using our contractors. And part of that is because this is a regional funding source, we administer grant applications for other regional partners that apply to us through the MPO, and then we award those funds. So that's really what this is our allocation for these funds, both for our internal use as well as for other regional entities that have applied mainly for minivans and things like that to provide services for those with disabilities. But again, it's a formula program that it's not, when we say apply for, it's really just the formal process of the funds have been appropriated to us. Now we just have to go through the formal process of putting them to use.
Questions for staff? Alder Carter?
Yeah, and Justin, thank you you have cleared up most of my questions. So I just want to know if does Dane County and other counties apply with us, or is this something that is already discussed in the regional transit?
So it is a bit of a unique situation in that we as Madison Metro are the designated recipient of the federal funds, but those funds are intended to serve a regional purpose. Again, yet another example of how our structure is unique nationwide, whereas most others are a regional transit authority. We are a city department, and that is
Okay.
rare across the country.
And
So yeah, that's basically our the funds are given to us to distribute regionally, and so we have to go through a process to solicit.
And will this improve the for example, paratransit and the Dane County Accessible Taxi Service? This money is made funded to improve the service to our residents or to improve the system?
So most of this funding is just a continuation. It's because we get the funding
Okay.
every year. We've just kind of programmed it in much the same way every year. The difference would be, like, for example, this year, one of the projects that's being funded is a new minivan. And so, typically there's kind of a cycle of our regional partners getting some equipment, but most of the funding is just allocated to everyday, annual expenses that have been funded by this program for years. So it's not really additional funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions on this item? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 9. That takes us to item 10, which is Legistar 72115, approving the submission of the required 2022 annual action plan to HUD. President Furman,
Move approval.
is there a second? It's moved and seconded. Let's see. I believe that Director O'Keefe is here with us. Jim, do you want to orient us to this item?
Sure. I'm happy to give an overview if alders want to get into more detail. I've got Lynette here to help with that. This is the submission of this annual report is an administrative obligation that accompanies the receipt that the city gets of federal funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, notably through the Community Development Block Grant Program, Federal Home Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. And it really is a request by HUD for recipients of those funds to describe how they intend to use them. We are required once every 5 years to prepare a consolidated plan, which lays out in general terms how we intend to use these funds. So they go toward everything from supporting affordable housing initiatives to supporting neighborhood revitalization and neighborhood planning. Some of this money goes toward economic development. Some of it goes to support persons in the community experiencing homelessness. So a variety of different uses. Most of these funds are allocated on a year-to-year basis through a request for proposals process. And of course, the Common Council gets final say on all of those. Some of this money is held back and supports administrative uses within the division. But this annual plan is merely a description of those commitments that have already been made through RFP processes or dollars that we have identified that will be the subject of future RFP processes in the current year. These funds total about $3.6 million, again, spread across those three programs that I mentioned.
Questions for staff? Alder Figueroa Cole?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jim. I was curious that I got curious because the resolution was talking about a report or a plan that needed to be submitted, but there was no attachment. But since then, I was able to review some of the documentation. So thanks for the summary. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I was going to say our apologies. We neglected to attach the plan. Again, it is something of a formality, but the plan should have been attached, and it is now, or it will be shortly, but wasn't available when Alder Figueroa Cole raised questions earlier.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Oh, Alder Carter?
Just wanted to know if the plan can be forwarded to the Finance Committee.
Sure. Staff can do that, and it will also be attached in Legistar. All right, seeing no other questions, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 10? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. That will take us to item 14, which is Legistar 72123, which is amending the Economic Development Division capital budget for TID 42. And let's get a motion on this one, President Furman.
Move adoption.
Second. Moved and seconded to adopt. It looks like Dan Rolfs is here to talk about this one. Dan, do you want to give us a brief overview?
Certainly. Happy to answer any questions as well. So what you see in front of you is the second year of a proposed 10-year study of South Madison. For those of you who've been following our efforts in South Madison, we will be making significant investments through tax increment finance in the coming years. We have already begun those investments through our what I believe my coworker Joe Gramacki refers to as our venture TIF program, using dollars donated into TID 42 and then investing those dollars into South Madison. You can see some of those investments in the property that we've acquired along South Park Street, along with the investments in the Village on Park. The purpose behind this study, I beg your pardon, is to find out if we're actually investing in ways that impact the residents of South Madison. Are we improving the lives of the folks who live there, or are we building a bunch of things that don't really impact their well-being? So this is the second year, as I mentioned. We will be creating the new South Madison TID in 2023, following the dissolution of the town of Madison. Essentially, as soon as we are legally allowed to create that district. And we will continue this study for the balance of the next 10 years through 2030 to essentially find out, are we impacting the lives of the residents in South Madison in a positive way? And hopefully, as we go along, we will get feedback from Population Health Institute and their staff to find out if we are do we need more of this or less of that, or make changes to the policies or programs that we're putting into play? So that's a quick overview. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa-Cole, questions?
Thank you, Dan. So, TID 42, which is the Wingra TID, which was great. I mean, again, there would be great to have those names up available. They're easier to remember and to figure out the location without having to dig for the information. So I look at the map and I look at the perimeter of it, and this resolution talks about the town of Madison annexation. Is that, I'm wondering, is the pocket of the town of Madison that is sandwiched between Arbor Hills and the Arboretum part of these resolution? Are they within the half a mile from the TID?
Beg your indulgence.
I think I heard you say something about opening a new TID. I mean, are you going to open a new TID closer to the town of Madison areas, or what is happening there?
Fair question. Thank you, Alder. So in early 2023, we will create a new TID in South Madison. The approximate boundaries will be Fish Hatchery Road, Wingra Creek, John Nolan Drive, and the Beltline. It will go south of the Beltline just a little bit over down by Badger Road, down by Badger Rock Middle School. But those are the approximate boundaries. So it will cover a good portion of the area that is between, or that is over by the Arboretum, but we are not currently proposing to extend it west of Fish Hatchery into the Arboretum. I believe Martin Street over to Arboretum Drive. We are not proposing to include that in this proposed new South Madison TID. So does that answer your question?
I mean, it does, but again, so we're going to be talking about the town of Madison, and that little pocket is the town of Madison. Also, I just want to make sure that they are not neglected, that they get the same benefit and care as everybody else, which is an exception. So I don't know how will that work, and I don't know if that would be half a mile from it.
Alder, let me suggest that if this is a conversation about the new pending South Madison TID and not TID 42, that you and staff have the conversation offline about the potential boundaries which have not been fully decided yet.
That's fine, but then for this resolution in front of me, I don't know. Again, the map is kind of hard for me to tell. I'm pretty sure we are off the half mile boundary, right? For this one.
That's correct. We're utilizing the so-called half-mile rule that's provided for in TIF law. And we are working within the areas that are currently only within the city. As under TIF law, we are not allowed to expend funds within areas that are outside our corporate limits.
Okay, so then the mention of the town of Madison here is technically formality because they're not yet integrated.
That's correct. Following the dissolution of the town of Madison in October of this year, we will then create a new South Madison TID where the town is no longer in existence, and a good amount of those areas will be included in this new South Madison TID.
Already. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this item? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 14. Brings us to item 15, which is Legislator 72124, approving the Building Improvement Grant Program out of our Economic Development Division. And we have both Saran and Matt here. Does one or both of you want to give us a quick description of this program, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I would be happy to. Hi, everyone. First of all, apologies as we forgot to attach the Building Improvement Grant Guidelines, so we'll be sure to add that shortly. So this program, it's a program that will provide funds to assist both businesses, so both property owners and tenants, to improve their commercial space. And funds could be used for costly improvements such as plumbing, electrical work. Business could improve their, add their improvement windows, energy efficient, ADA improvements, things like that. The grant amount is up to $50,000 for building improvement projects, or if they're looking to just use the grant for something smaller, like purchasing furniture or equipment, things that the business owners could take with them if they were to expand to a different location. That grant is up to $25,000.
Are there questions for staff on this item? Alder Figueroa Cole?
I'm sorry, I'm slowing down the process today. Thank you for that. You answered most of my questions. Again, I was trying to understand. It looks like this is a new program that was approved as it wasn't a distribution of the ARPA money. So thank you for explaining what the program is about. Can you also clarify on regards what are the targeting areas for this grant? Are you going after a specific business or areas in the city?
Yes, thank you. So not necessarily specific areas of the city, but the eligible businesses are retail businesses, so restaurants, spa, salon, any businesses where they have people coming into their shops and purchasing a product or services. So businesses that are like dental offices or maybe just insurance, those type of businesses are not eligible.
Thank you. And then I also noticed that there seemed to be some kind of combination of funds with, again, TIF, tax increment funding. Can you explain that a little bit, please?
Sure. I think Matt could explain the TIF piece of it. Thanks.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Alder. I'm Matt McClojeski, the Economic Development Director for the city. So what we propose to do is in areas where we have a TIF district and have TIF funding available, we would potentially use TIF funding to pay for these grants. And then in those areas of the city where we don't have a TIF district, we will use the ARPA dollars. So in other words, it'll allow us to use those ARPA dollars more broadly in the community by preserving them by using TIF instead where we have TIF available.
Thank you so much. And that's all the questions I have for this one.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer, questions?
Thank you. Yes, I had some similar questions about this and appreciate Saran, you explaining that it is your intent to add to Legistar the program guidelines. I was searching for them over the weekend as I was reviewing the packet for tonight's meeting, similar to the HUD annual action plan, and appreciate that you'll be uploading those hopefully sooner rather than later. So what I was able to find was a draft that was considered by the Economic Development Committee at their April meeting. Is that the accurate, most current version of the program guidelines?
I think we've made a couple updates since the April one, I believe. I would have to pull that up to double check, but we did make some updates to that April guideline.
And then, so the first therefore be it resolved clause of the resolution states that the council, well, I could read the whole thing, but in essence, the phrase I'm curious about is, it says consistent, I think the word with is missing, but consistent, the approved program guidelines. So my question is, approved by whom? Does EDC have final approval over the program guidelines, or is once they're attached to this Legistar item, is the assumption that this resolution will ultimately have the program guidelines adopted by the Common Council?
Yes.
Either one of you want to take that?
Yes. So Alder, it's the council that approves the program guidelines. So the EDC provided input on them, but now it's before you this evening, and I realize you're at a disadvantage because the actual guidelines aren't attached in Legistar, but we will get those up there so that when the full council acts, you have them. But this will be the council approving the guidelines, and then the program will be up and running.
Thank you. The resolution doesn't expressly state that we're adopting the program guidelines. It makes it actually seem like the city approved the program guidelines past tense. So anyway, I'm not saying that we need to have an alternate or substitute resolution, but I was confused when I read it. Just getting that out there. Anyway, my main question is, I had no concerns with the draft program guidelines that I found again in Legistar or EDC had before them back in April. My main question is, so when the Common Council considers this at our next meeting, and assuming that we have adoption at the first council meeting in July, how soon will our friend Ruth be able to accept applications and process them? I saw that there was also a draft application form in the EDC agenda in April. Will we be live immediately? Because as you all are well aware, there is great anticipation amongst some State Street mom and pop businesses as to when this program will be going live again.
Yes, on the July 12th Common Council, if that's the final approval from the Common Council, then we would be able to have the applications go live on July 15th.
Great. So once the proceedings are approved by the mayor, Ruth would be able to accept applications pretty much a few days after the council meeting. And she might even have some in process. I don't know.
The mayor will be happy to approve the proceedings expeditiously.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you
you.
both very much. I just want, I know this is getting into discussion. I just want to repeat that I think that it's terrific that mom and pop businesses are able to take advantage of this this program. It was very popular when we briefly had it in the waning days of the last State Street to 32 before we closed it. So thank you all staff for your work on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Vitever, questions?
Yeah, it just sort of a timing questions. My understanding is that ARPA funds are limited in when they can be used. So I guess just trying to understand sort of process for this program, the TID versus ARPA funds and how that will work.
Sure, Alder, I can maybe take a lead on that. So we have, I believe, until the end of 2024 to spend the ARPA dollars. And I think that just given sort of the level of interest we have in this program, I suspect that we will have expended them by then. But then we've included the provision in here that, you know, this program can stay beyond that if we have other funding sources identified. So what we hope to do is throughout new TIF districts, so the State Street TID district this year, the new South Madison TID district next year, to include funding allocations for this program within those TID project plans. And then we may also want to, for some of our existing TIDs that are already out there, as we're amending them over time, to include funding in those as well, so that we can continue the program using TIF funding once that ARPA funding is all spent.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Oh, I'm already unmuted. No. So we are put an application up closely right after July 15 meeting. And how long will the process take to, I mean, when will the application window be closed to then start to grant the money?
Sure. So this is going to be an open application. There's no deadline, so folks could just apply as they need, and it's on a first come first serve basis until the funds runs out.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter, questions?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask the same question, and that is if the attachment can be sent to the Finance Committee members as soon as possible.
Thank you, Alder. Any additional questions for staff on item 15? All right, I failed to get a motion, so President Ferdman.
Move approval.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded to approve item 15. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we're recording unanimous vote in favor. And Christina, I just would ask you to note in the minutes that Alder Everest has joined us. Good to see you, Alder. Thanks for joining us. We want to make sure you have credit for being here. All right, so that will take us to item 16, which is Legislator 72127. Declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing. Can I get a motion on this one?
Move approval.
Second.
And a second, thank you. I suspect this is finance staff. Christine, do you want to give an overview? Or Adam?
I was going to say Adam is here for that item.
Great. Adam, do you want to give us a brief overview?
Yeah, great. Thanks for the time. So I appreciate that. So this, in conjunction with item 17, which was on the consent agenda, are two kind of just administrative requirements to participate in the DNR environmental loans program. So either Clean Water Fund loans or Safe Drinking Water Fund. Basically the revolving fund loans through the Wisconsin DNR. So item 16 is the water utilities acknowledgement that we are submitting an application to reimburse some completed water main replacement projects roughly 10 projects valued in total at about $5.5 million to request reimbursement for those expenses already paid through low interest loans through the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Fund. So we've made our intent clear for a number of years. All of these contracts were bid with the contract requirements to make them eligible for reimbursement. Last fall, we submitted our intent to apply for the DNR. The intent to apply was accepted, and we were placed on the project priority list for state fiscal year 2023. So this is a resolution just declaring our intent to proceed with that application and convert our interim payments to low interest loans through the Safe Drinking Water Fund and Revolving Fund.
Thank you, Adam. Are there questions? Alder Figueroa Cole? You're muted, Alder. There you go.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, that was way more clear than the resolution. I'll give you credit for that. But so can you please explain what's the DNR Safe Drinking Water Loan Program? So that's something that they have and we are loaning from them?
Yeah, so the EPA through the federal government receives funds that are allocated to the states to manage those funds. In Wisconsin, the DNR manages those federal incentives or credits, and in some cases, some communities qualify for principal forgiveness. But in the case of Madison's water main replacement projects, we qualify for kind of their default loan offering, which is basically loans issued with the help of that EPA federal funding, offered at about 50 or 60% of the going market rate for borrowing. So we're able to, what we did, the water utility did in 2019 is we took out kind of these temporary bond anticipation notes rather than going through a full 20-year bond program to fund capital improvements like our water main replacement. So we issued these temporary short-term loans, bond anticipation notes to cover the capital costs of these projects with the intent to then reimburse those expenses through revolving fund loans from the DNR. So basically we're going to take these proceeds from the DNR loan to pay back that temporary loan. And then we'll be moving forward with an interest rate that's about 50 or 60% of the market rate.
And
I do apologize for the wording of that resolution. There's specific wording that you get in template from the DNR and EPA on how they have to be phrased. And it was reviewed by the attorney's office and our consultant, and there were no objections. But I agree, it isn't exactly clear what the intent was with this.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm okay with that. So then the loans that we still have a loan against the DNR and that gets paid with a capital budget. Is that how that works?
It's basically a 20-year repayment. It's just almost the exact same thing as if we were to have a municipal bond sale and then pay back those proceeds over 20 years. Okay. This is functionally very similar. It's just offered through the DNR's revolving loans program, their environmental loans office, and their interest rates are significantly lower than we would see on the market.
Thank you. And that's all I had. And again, I focus on this because there was no attachment, but I don't think we need an attachment for this one.
Right. It's just a declaration of intent.
Yeah, right. Yep. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions on item 16? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of item 16? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 16. And that will take us to item 20, which is Legislator 70352, discussion on the meeting format for the 2022 Finance Committee meetings. So this is just a discussion item. If somebody wishes to make a motion in the process of the discussion, that is in order, and we'll take it up if that happens. But is there thoughts or discussion on our meeting formats going forward? Alder Bidifer.
So I have actually been thinking about this, believe it or not, especially because the last couple of meetings that we had were like 10 or 15 minutes. And so that's what I struggle with, is a 10 or 15-minute meeting to me is not worth being in person for. I don't think we should make people travel to where they need to go. But I'm also, we don't necessarily know what the agenda is going to be by the time we need a public notice, whether it's in person or online. So I'm struggling, and kind of the best thought I had was like, we should do all our budget meetings in person and everything else should stay online so that we can accommodate that. So that was my thinking.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Actually, kind of second that. I was just going through the budget sessions. That makes more sense because those are more predictable.
Alder Carter.
Was that a thought or a motion? Because it sounded like a thought.
I think we're still in the thought realm, Alder Carter. But let me ask a question then of the group. If the idea would be to remain virtual, but to gather in person for the budget meetings, would it be your collective desire to do the budget briefings in person, which is sort of the first round? And then there's the round of meetings where we deal with amendments and actually vote on the budget. So just to maybe clarify, and when you say budget meetings, which ones you mean? Alder Figueroa Cole?
I mean, that's a good point, because also begs the question about, are we talking about a hybrid meeting or are we talking just an in-person meeting, right? What is available to us that needs to be covered? So depending on the answer to that, I mean, if we have I think those agencies' presentations are, again, they're also predictable. They're long but predictable. So perhaps we can keep that available for the public online and not be in person, and then the actual negotiations be in person.
So whatever we do, these meetings are broadcast on City Channel. So they will be available for the public to view, if nothing else. I think I did not consult with IT staff before this meeting, but I think depending on what month we're talking about, it is possible that we could do the budget presentation as a hybrid. I think it is likely that we could do the budget deliberations as a hybrid. So I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility. So when I say hybrid, the thing that would be different is that you could have members of the public register and participate virtually in addition to being in the room with us. And if needed, members or staff could also be virtual, although I think our preference would be to have them in person if possible.
So I mean, and again, I wanted to add to the comment. I won't resist continuing in this format either. So this is fine with me too. So, but yeah, but I definitely agree with Alder Bidifer that to be there for 15-20 minutes, that's really not productive at all. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter?
Well, since we're still thinking, I think I listen, Regina started this thinking. I would be open to doing the finance meeting virtually through the budget presentation. But when we come to deliberation, amendments, et cetera, I really would like to see that in person. And if I recall, we used to have long lines of the public. I don't know if we will anymore, but that actually came to those meetings of deliberation. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
thank you,
my
Alder.
thought.
Yeah, that's your thought. And you're correct. I think that we will likely see good engagement from the public on budget deliberation. That'd be my expectation. And I think it would be very appropriate for us to do those in a hybrid format. So I might suggest, if somebody wanted to make a motion, that the motion be something along the lines of having the budget deliberation meetings as hybrid, and the budget briefing meetings as hybrid, if IT staff are prepared to facilitate that, and that all of our regular meetings would be continue to be held virtually. It's just as a potential suggestion. Alder Carter?
That's my motion.
Alder Evers, is that a second? Oh, you're muted, Alder.
Yeah, I can actually. I first have a question, but
let's just get a second on the book so that we know.
All
right, President Furman will second. So it's moved and seconded, and then Alder Evers, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. My question is that for the budget presentation, by stipulating that as hybrid, is the suggestion then that Finance Committee members should show up in person for that as well? That's what the question I have is, it sounded like there was some inclination to making that personal attendance, in-person attendance optional for the presentation and not for the deliberation, but I may have misunderstood.
Alder Carter?
That is correct. What I was looking at was that if IT cannot do the presentations hybrid, but can do the deliberations hybrid, that we would have the presentations virtual. So trying to cover whatever the situation comes up.
So I think there's sort of two questions here, right? So one question is, what is the type of meeting that we're having, right? And so there's, I think our shared understanding, and if we do share this understanding, that would be the motion, that our shared understanding is that our quote normal meetings would remain virtual like this one. Then both the budget presentation and deliberation meetings would be hybrid, with the caveat that IT might not be ready for the budget presentation meetings. And if they weren't, we would default to virtual.
Yes.
And then there's a separate question, which Alder Evers is asking, which is, do we then collectively as a body want to say something about our attendance, regardless of the type of meeting, right? So that if in a hybrid meeting, do we want to also say that the Finance Committee members will be present in person, even though there's the hybrid option? So I think that's a separate question, Alder Evers, and you could add it to the motion if people are amenable. You could we could take it up afterwards, or we could just collectively express our desire one way or the other. So we do have a motion and a second on the motion, Alder Evers.
Well, before we vote, just to my understanding of what we discussed at council is that council members would feel the responsibility to attend, but we were not going to be keeping score. So if someone attended the meeting, if a council member attended by virtually, or if a finance committee member was traveling for work but could it still attend the meeting, like I am right now, perhaps that option would be available. But the expectation is that committee members would feel the responsibility to attend when they can.
President Furman?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment that we go forward with this, but we talk about this again on August 29th, which would be the meeting right before our 9/12 budget hearing meetings. That way we can confirm all the virtual and hybrid and all that stuff. So just make sure that's on our radar for the 29th. So that'd be my amendment, is that we discuss this again on the 29th.
So that we would express our intention to move in this direction, but confirm on the 29th.
Correct, thank you.
Any objection? Seeing no objection, we'll take that as part of the motion. Any further discussion? Do I need to restate the motion? No, we're all good. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote and ask Christine to work with IT to make it so. I suppose we could have asked your opinion before we voted, Christine. Sorry. That's the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening.